Hello from 1 mile away.
I'm just glad I don't have to hear Destin give me crap about wearing a hoodie to council. I think when you're at home, it's definitely allowed.
Basically, the only time I wear a collared shirt is to a council activity.
Once you two are done bantering, we'll get this meeting started.
You have the gavel.
Okay. Call this meeting to order. Well, welcome everyone to my second ever council meeting. Excited again to be here and appreciate everyone going with the flow on this hybrid model we are doing tonight. And we will figure out any kinks along the way. To get started, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, justice for all. Rory, would you call roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry.
What?
Is he on? Good night, thank you. Gettle,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Robinson,
Here.
and Glover.
Here.
Yeah, I know Quinn said he was going to join remotely sometime.
Thank you, Rory.
You're welcome.
Chief Thomas, would you like to give your UPD report?
I would. Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd just like to say COVID is not fun to get. Sounds like myself as well as Lieutenant Malone may have come down with it over the weekend, but following Dr. Dunn's advice, we did not go get tested and are just, as per her advice that came out last week, if you feel like you have it, you probably do. And rather than burdening the test sites, use the proper quarantine methods. And that's what we're doing. So I hope that Sergeant Richardson made it out there in the audience. He's probably the big behemoth looking guy that's a little bit intimidating in the back corner there if I know him. But anyhow, I'm hoping that the mayor and the council got the statistical report. Our numbers are trending as predictable. Looks like on our December numbers as far as total cases, I did just notice a discrepancy in the graph versus the ComStat report numbers. One shows 862 and the graph shows just over 900. I'm going to look into that once I get back in and get into our ComStat numbers. Mayor, just for your information, the ComStat are the actual statistics that are put out through the UPD statistical analysts. And sometimes there's a slight discrepancy between that number and our actual report management system. But for tracking purposes, we just stick with the ComStat numbers. Of significance, I'd like to point out in the report, we added not only all the hotel and motel police calls for service, but a special column that summarized the year in total for what we consider our corridor motels. And those would be the motels along the 7200 South Corridor up to State Street, and actually going just west under the freeway. As anticipated, or it could be predicted, two of our hotels, I won't name the name, are completely almost double, if not triple, what the average is with many of the other hotels and motels that are in the Midvale area. And that could just be anticipated. We do a lot of proactive enforcement there. That may be cause for some of the numbers, but at the same time, we are working with those motels to try to keep those numbers down as best as possible. That's all I have to report tonight, council. Do you have any questions or comments for me?
Chief, we hope you feel better and thanks for staying home.
Yeah, today's the first day I feel human, and if I'd have known I actually could wear my hoodie, I'd go put it back on, but instead I put on this UPD polo to make it appear that I'm in full uniform, but I'm not. So that's our secret.
Do they have UPD hoodies?
Yeah.
So I think you should put that on then, and also get me one somehow.
I will do that. Thanks, council.
Thank you, Chief. Please get some rest and get better. This portion of the meeting is for anybody wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for the public hearing portion of the agenda. You may address the city council at this point by stepping up to the microphone and giving your name for the record. Are there any public comments? And I'll add to that, Rory, are there any online comments?
I have not received any online comments, no.
Seeing no comments here, we'll move on to council reports. Is Councilmember Sperry still not here? Okay.
He should be here any minute. He didn't have the link and I just forwarded the link to him.
Oh,
Okay. Is it okay for me to go through everybody else and then come back to him if he's on at that point?
sure.
Great. Councilmember Gettle.
Thank you, Mayor Stevenson. I just wanted to note, here we are again, remotely, most of us. Not much to say. Everyone knows, what's gone on recently with conflicting information from our elected officials and some of our non-elected officials. But I am glad to see that we are able to do this hybrid meeting, and hopefully, despite what might come from the legislature, will retain our ability to make the decisions that we find to be the safest for ourselves and for our city. That's all I have to say tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump back to Councilmember Sperry if you have a report.
I don't. Just thank you, Councilmember Gettle, for resending that link to me so I could join.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, I just want to thank the IT department for getting this together again. I think we all thought we washed our hands of these types of meetings. What's interesting and sort of scary is these are, not in hyperbole, these numbers are 100 times or more worse than when we started doing these the meetings. So not only are we not out of the clear, we're actually in a worse spot than we were when we started this. So hopefully this isn't a long-term thing, that it follows sort of the other trends. Weirdly, New York just seems to always be 2 weeks ahead of us, and I think their numbers are finally going down. But I guess we'll just keep watching them and try to do what's best for our area. And so I'd like to thank the IT for helping out with that.
Councilmember Robinson.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Glover.
I just want to say aloha to all of you. Those are real palm trees in the background there. It is warm and wonderful over here, but I'm glad to be with you all tonight. That's all.
That's cruel, Paul.
Yeah, I agree.
That's mean.
What time
But
is
it
it there?
sure-
Is it noon?
It is 3 o'clock,
Okay. It's not
3
too
hours
bad.
difference. So I expect this meeting not to get over at midnight, okay?
Midnight your
Thank you.
time, right?
Right.
Thank you. For my own report, just want to reiterate the Salt Lake County mask mandate that we have in place right now. Want to ask everybody to take this variant seriously. I know our city is, and ask all Midvale City residents to do the same so we can protect our friends, family, and neighbors. The other thing I'll update on is that I had a great meeting with the Canyon School District last week. something of note for those of you who don't have children in the school district that you may have seen or not, is that Canyon School District is doing a 5-day reset, is what they're calling it. Today's the last day on that. So there was no school from Friday to today. That's going along with CDC guidelines to try and, again, reset the numbers by taking that 5-day break. A couple other things of note with the meeting we had with them is that they are in the process of wrapping up the redistricting. As soon as we've have some other information on that, we'll bring that to the council so you all have an opportunity to see those new boundaries. The Hillcrest High School parking lot has been completed with still construction blocking the 7th East and Union entrance, but they expect to have that completed this summer. Union Middle School is expected to be completed fall of 2023 and the parking lot later that year. That's all I had. Matt, if you'd like to give your report.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. All right, good evening. Just a couple things. The first one is later on the agenda, we will be discussing a change to our ordinance with regards to electronic meetings. And one of the things that we will need to, I think, get a feeling from the council on this evening is while the ordinance that we'll be talking about allows us to say go fully electronic in our meetings, what we'll need to get a feeling from the council on is if we'll take that option or if for the following meetings during the mask order, we'll be continuing to do like this evening where we have an anchor location and electronic, this hybrid model. The reason that we're going with a hybrid model this evening is that the previous emergency order that we were able to use to go fully electronic had expired, which is why we have to have the anchor site. And then whatever direction the council decides to go this evening, the planning commission will follow suit. So I just want to make sure you guys are thinking about it before we get to that item. Not only what are we approving, but what is it that you want to do for at least one more city council meeting. And we can come to that when that item comes up. The next one is this evening, we're going to be touring the new Zion's Bank building because of the mask order and the fact that we're moving to this hybrid meeting. We thought it appropriate that we would not have the tour of the construction site today. But what we have kicked around is the idea of doing it before the February 15th meeting. That would also take place at 5 o'clock, so it'd be a little bit earlier, and it would take the place of our workshop. Does anyone have any problems with us doing that or concerns or would like us to pick a different date? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll get back to the developer and have them schedule that time. And then I guess just the final thing is, as I'm sure everyone is aware, the legislative session has started today, and that'll be 45 days of additional activity. I don't know if you guys can all hear this, but my child just decided to start playing some really loud music, and she has been perfect right until I started talking. Anyways, I was just going to say, legislative session starts up. There's several bills that are affecting us. We've discussed them in the past, and we'll be giving you updates on those bills, as well as a couple of new ones that we think may impact us as well at future meetings. And of course, if any time during the session, any of you have any questions or see a bill that you think will have an impact on us that you haven't heard us talk to you about, please reach out, let us know, and we'll make sure that both our staff and our representatives up on the Hill are aware of it. Anyway, that's all I have for this evening. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, we're going to move on to the department report, and we'll hear from the community development and Nate Rockwood.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Just a very quick follow-up update. Several weeks ago during my last report, I let the council know that we had had some technical issues with business licenses. We were able to correct all those just a few weeks after that report, so that those business license renewal notices all went out back in December. We've taken some steps to make sure that we're able to double check those before they go out so that we get the right billing amounts out. We're continuing to work on that. But just an update that we had those go out. The majority of the businesses were being undercharged, so they were paying the base fee, but they weren't paying the individual business specific fee. And so we've corrected those, and then we'll continue to let people know. Some people got a bill, they paid it, they'll get a second bill. We'll make sure that that they understand that we're not double billing them, but that we're just correcting a mistake that was made. So out of the way that we do it is we do residential rental licenses out of 6 months in midsummer, and then we do the renewals for commercial licenses at the end of the calendar year. So that's what we were doing, were those commercial licenses. So it looks like of the 1,400 or so licenses, there was probably maybe somewhere between 170 to 200 that were off. So not a huge percentage, but enough. And then obviously we want to make sure that we bill our businesses correctly. What it looks like is that was about a difference, now that we've looked at it, of about $35,000 that we were under billing. So that's been corrected. And as I said, we're taking steps to make sure that we can double check those and triple check those before they go out, so that we always have the right numbers going out. That's the only thing I have to report today. If you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer that.
Any questions from the council? Okay, thank you, Nate. Okay, next item is our consent agenda. Consider minutes of January 4th, 2022. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review those minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
Mayor, I motion we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah.
Rory, will you please call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Glover,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
and Sperry.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, we have 2 action items for tonight. The first item A, consider ordinance number 2022-003, an ordinance amending the Midvale Municipal Code, section 2.36.040 regarding electronic meetings. Lisa.
Thank you. As Matt said, we are we're asking you to amend our current ordinance excuse me, with respect to electronic meetings. Last year, due to the pandemic and the challenges that public bodies faced in dealing with the Public Meeting and Open Meetings Act, the state legislature changed made some additions to the statute that governs electronic meetings. And in essence, what it did is it said it allowed for public meetings to be able to be held remotely or all electronically with no anchor location. But before you can do that, the public body or the municipality has to pass an ordinance or resolution or that says that the governing body can do that, or they can hold public meetings that way. So in Title II, we have in 2.36.040, we provide for electronic meetings, but it requires that there be an anchored location. So this, the additions to the ordinance that we are proposing that the council pass incorporates the amendments made to the state code. It makes some technical and conforming language changes to that. And it allows that we can hold it also expands it to include the Planning Commission. So before, they could not hold meetings electronically. And it allows that if the chair of the public body finds that holding a anchor location would create a substantial risk of health and safety to those attending, then that chair can ask that there be no public meeting or no anchor location, excuse me. And that just has to be in the public notice that there will not be an anchor location. You still can have an anchor location, but it just doesn't require it. And does anybody have any questions for me on this ordinance change?
Not surprisingly, I have a few questions, Lisa.
Okay.
And I'll make them quick.
Okay.
So this, if we pass this tonight, how does that impact the state law that says that we have to have at least the ability for the public to comment? So would we just send out in our notice to say this is not going to be a public meeting, but if you wish to comment on any of the agenda items, here are the ways that you can still do so?
Right. We would publish in the notice that this public meeting will not have an anchor location. And so there's no place for the public to go and attend the meeting. And then just as we did during COVID, we would explain to the public how they can still participate in the meeting.
Okay, but then we could use this not just for a public health emergency. We could do this if there was some city emergency that we had to meet quickly, and an anchor location, as you said, would not be deemed, in the public safety interest.
So it can, they say that you can hold a public meeting without an anchor location, like I said, for the public health and safety, for those attending or those who would normally meet at the location, or if the building if this building were closed for a health reason, public health reason. So it doesn't allow for the lack of an anchor location just because we held an emergency meeting. Does that make sense?
Okay. I guess what I'm driving at is to make sure that, the current council or any future council isn't able to use this ordinance to say, hey, there might be a lot of people who come out to speak negatively about something. Why don't we all just stay home so that we don't have to face them?
No. That's not allowed. The public notice has to have a statement in it, that the notice of the meeting has to have a statement as to why the meeting is being held without an anchor location.
Okay. And are there other cities that have already adopted something similar? I know very little in government is brand spanking new, so I'm assuming other cities have adopted something like this already.
I'm assuming, this was effective May of last year, and we all thought we were not going to have to do this again. So no one, I don't know. I haven't looked to see if anyone. I'm assuming that most everyone will make changes to their ordinance to conform with this new state statute.
Okay, and then just last question, is this tied into an emergency declaration from the county or the state, or, how Mayor Hale in March of 2020 was the one who issued the order for Midvale City? So would any or all three of those be appropriate orders to allow this to kick in?
Well, we don't need one. We don't need an emergency order for this to kick in. it would be probably helpful in substantiating why we want to do a meeting without a anchor location. Again, we can always do electronic meetings. We just have to have the anchor location. And so the only change is that if it poses a substantial likelihood of or risk of the health and safety of those people that are coming. So it doesn't require that we have a specific order, just that the chair find that that having it with an anchor location would be a health concern for people coming.
Okay, and then just for clarification for anyone who doesn't know, the mayor is the chair of the
Yes.
city council. So it would be the mayor's decision alone. Is that correct?
The mayor would have to find, yes, I mean, it just says the chair would have to find, although the mayor would get the council, gets his authority from the council. So I think that the mayor could make that determination, and the chair, and it's also like the chair of the planning commission as well. But I
Okay.
assume the mayor would talk to the council before that.
Okay. Well, I just, to be honest, I'm a little nervous about some of those kind of what if scenarios. Like, we have a weak mayor system. Sorry, Mayor Stevenson, that's no reflection on you. But, I would like to know specifically if the mayor could make that determination themselves, or do they have to have a majority of the council agreeing with them? Or, I think that we should have those steps laid out. Or if the mayor's out of town for some reason, then does the mayor pro tem have that authority?
Yes, the mayor pro tem would have that authority. And it depends on, I mean, in our situation, somebody has to make that determination, right? And so the state said the chair of the public body, but in our ordinance, I mean, but there would need to be the mayor could not do something without the consent of the council. The council could, I mean, if the mayor declared that there needed to be a public meeting without an anchor location, the council could override that if there was not sufficient basis for such. I mean, that's just the nature of our form of government.
Okay, so it's not specifically spelled out, but we would use our governing rules, which we do have
Correct.
a modified Robert's Rules of Orders in place. Okay, I mean, I wish that there was something that just spelled out some of this specifically, because I
Okay.
could see it being a contentious.
That
It could be, and not necessarily amongst the 5 and 6 of us, but we're not going to be in these positions for eternity.
Right. Well, the thing that I see is exactly what I could see happening is that would mean that you would have to hold a public meeting to give the consent to the mayor so we can put that in there. We could put the chair of the public body with but again, you've got the planning commission that's included in this as well. But just for the council, we could put the chair, the mayor can, if the mayor makes the determination with the consent of the council, we can add that in there just for the council portion of it. But then if something came up, you would have to hold a meeting to give the mayor that consent.
See,
Does
and
that
that's
make
why,
sense?
yeah, and I'm not saying any of this because I want the mayor to have to get, approval from
Uh-huh.
3 people. In fact, I think the mayor should have the ability to unilaterally make this decision. But yeah, I don't know what the other council members think about that. I just want it one way or another. I want it to be spelled out in our code, like this is specifically how this process is triggered and by whom.
And right
not
now,
by whom.
right, and right now it is the chair of the public body. So the chair of the planning commission and the mayor makes that determination. So if you want that, if you would like that change, we can make that amendment.
I think the other thing too, as part of this, is that the authority of the mayor is granted, this has already been said, but is granted by the council. And if there were, say, a bad actor that was using this authority for some reason that was not for the public benefit, the council would have the ability to then either change that ordinance or change some other, or this specific ordinance or another portion of it to sort of address that after the fact. But as Lisa was saying, this is the proactive way of making sure that there's sort of one person who has the ability to make us have the ability to go into an electronic meeting without requiring us to have a meeting in order to do so. So, you know, would someone, I guess you just have to ask, is there someone who would be that bad actor and know that there might be repercussions of doing this if it's not for the benefit of the city?
Well, I know that in 2020, in March of 2020, there was question from our previous mayor, Hale, who didn't want to initially publicly declare something until the county mayor did. And, you know, that's the type of situation, you know, there were a couple of council members, myself included, who were very much for some sort of city declaration. But again, at that point, as I recall it, the mayor waited specifically for the county mayor to weigh in on that. And so it's not necessarily a bad actor, you know, it's just, if it's not spelled out entirely in our code, then, you know, reasonable minds could come to different conclusions about how that's triggered. But I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who has any thoughts on this. I don't know if other council members might want to weigh in or not. If not, then we can just go with what's written.
I have a question, Lisa.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I just need to know more about the Open Meetings Act, but if public notice were given and then some sort of health emergency happened afterwards, would this allow us to go fully online without the anchor location?
No, it has to be noticed properly. So it would have to be within 24 hours of the meeting. It would have to be changed.
I was one of the ones that was also frustrated with how it went down the first time. That being said, we kind of didn't know what we were doing or how it kind of went, right? So I think there was just some lessons learned, and I do think it should always be spelled out, but that's me and everything, you know, where it says who can call it or not. I mean, I don't necessarily think it should only be the mayor that can call it, because I pushed for it last time and we kind of had to wait. So, you know, as long as the mayor can call it, or, you know, 3 council people, you know, and it's tied to like, you know, something serious, not necessarily tied to an agenda item like Dustin was worried about earlier, you know. That's my 2 cents with it.
I'm good the way it's written, just because I think that if something goes wrong, it can only go wrong for 1 meeting or 2, and we can change the ordinance. We can do whatever needs to be done as a body to be able to rectify any problems. I mean, we have to put trust in our mayor to do the right things. And then if he doesn't do the right things, then we need to be able to change that. But I mean, we have so many things that could happen, not just a pandemic, but we have earthquakes and all kinds of things that we might have to have a remote meeting. And I think the mayor ought to have that responsibility to be able to determine that. If again, he doesn't determine it right, we have the right as a council to reverse whatever he's done. Might take 1 meeting to do it, but we can call a special meeting if we have to.
But would that special meeting have to be remote in the meantime? No, I agree with what you said, Councilmember Glover.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-003? Rory, help me out here.
Okay. Council members. Someone needs to make a motion.
Hang on, this is why I hate the online one. I
Yeah.
really kind of need a second iPad.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks,
Got it, Paul?
Yep, I move that we adopt ordinance number 2022-0-03, amending sections 2.36.040 electronic meetings of Midvale City Municipal Code.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Rory, please call roll.
Okay. Councilmember Robinson,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gettle,
Yes.
Sperry,
Aye.
and Glover.
Aye.
And I apologize. I could always read that. If you guys can't find it, I am happy to do so. Just tell me to read it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item B, consider resolution number 2022-R-02, a resolution appointing the mayor and city councils, board and committee assignments. Matt.
Okay. Can you all see the screen that has the board membership on it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So good evening. On a mostly annual basis, we have gone through and updated this list in order to make sure that we are approving who's going to be representing us on external groups. There's two things I wanted to cover this evening. The first one is the primary thing that we're going to be doing with this meeting, which is I have updated our membership list, and the primary change that I made to the list is that I changed Mayor Hale for Mayor Stevenson on all the committees where the board has represented us. I did notice I made one error in there, which is I still had Mayor Hale still shown on the community council. So when we get to the time of approving this, I'll need someone to indicate that they would like to make that change so that it reflects Mayor Stevenson being a member of this. Now, so that's the primary change I made. I also made a couple of tweaks to this in that we had started to expand this list to include all sorts of organizations that we have different relationships with, some of them much less formal. It also included some committees that, for example, the mayor would be a part of that committee because they're a part of COG. And so do we also need to approve that, the membership on that subcommittee. And so I took that off of there because it wasn't something we were actually approving per se. And so those are the minor changes that I've made to this. And by approving this list, it will give Mayor Stevenson the ability to officially represent us on the committees that I have listed on here. Now, so that's sort of the first part of it. The second thing I wanted to bring up is just this list did get a little expanded in a way that wasn't maybe what the original intent was, because it started to include, like I said before, a lot of groups that we have different relationships with. On here, there are committees where we get to officially pick who's going to represent us on that committee. There are some committees where we are told by whatever that external group is who they want from us to represent, to be represented on there. And then there's some where we have a less formal relationship. And so what I'm asking is that this evening, we basically, if you're comfortable with it, would approve this list with the changes as they relate to Mayor Stevenson, and that I would come back later this spring with an updated list that really sort of clarifies the relationship that we have with these organizations, so that it's clear which ones we're formally sort of making a resolution that that's who our representative is versus who we're just sort of acknowledging that that is who's going to the meetings, if you will. So there's a formal relationship with some of these, and in some of them there's a less formal one, but this list sort of makes it seem like it's all part of the same thing. So we would come back and we could address all of the council's memberships, like I said, later this spring. We last updated this list in June, and so I'm sorry, May of last year, and so it hasn't been a full year yet. So I figured I'd have some time to sort of work on this list, get it a little bit more clear, and then we could address all of the different members for all the different committees. So that's what I was hoping to get out of this evening, is mainly getting Mayor Stevenson approved. But if there is anything that is pressing on here that you would like for us to change, we could do that. And then on this list, I have highlighted in yellow all of the committees where Mayor Stevenson has been added, and with the exception on here of the one that's in blue, which is the one that on the resolution still lists Mayor Hale, and we would need to make it. We'd need to edit that. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns?
Hey, Matt, I'm not seeing it. There's the Association of Municipal Councils. I don't see that on this list. And as I recall, I think I was the last person who was appointed to it.
I thought that it's the Council of
Government.
Sorry, it's I thought Heidi was on it. It's the Council of, sorry.
The Council of Governments.
Yeah, I thought I was on that one too.
There's another one called the AMC, the Association of Municipal Councils, that I was appointed to. That's not on this list. And it's one, I think there was some confusion last time because I spoke about the AMC and not being able to accommodate their meeting schedules, which tend to be on Wednesday mornings. So I, at the time, oh, there it is, Association.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, oh, so yeah, just the second page was cut off, sorry.
I apologize, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, the Association of Government Councils, and yeah, I thought, yeah, we had ended up with Heidi on that, is how that.
Okay,
was.
yep, just wasn't seeing it, it was cut off, sorry.
Apologies.
Looks good.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Matt?
Just a reminder, if anyone is going to make the motion to approve this, that you amend the motion so that it changes the representation on the community council.
Do we have a motion with that amendment?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2022 R02, a resolution approving the mayor and city council's board and committee assignments with the amendment to put Mayor Marcus Stevenson on the community council.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Rory, please call roll.
Okay, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
Sorry, my mouse is missing. Sperry,
Aye.
Glover,
Aye.
and Robinson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our discussion items. We have 3 of these tonight. Our first one, discussion regarding city council redistricting. Matt, you're up again.
Thank you. There's been no changes since the last time we talked about it. However, when we last discussed redistricting, it was in a workshop and not in a formal meeting where there was a packet with the dates and everything in it, and it wasn't discussed live over or it wasn't streamed live. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to sort of both refresh the council on what we discussed previously, and then that way also the public who's watching this would be informed on it too. So just as a quick reminder, what we had discussed before is that beginning now, and we've sort of started this process, and we will be gathering data from the 2020 census, state of Utah, Salt Lake County, so that we can begin preparing those draft redistricting maps. Then our plan is we will generate 2 to 3 different options for those maps, and we will hold a public open house for to receive comment on them. We'll do that in March. We will then provide those maps to the city council for review with the feedback that we received from the open house, as well as any other public comments that we receive on it, with the goal of having the council adopt the new council maps in April. The thing that the timeline that we're being held to is that we have 6 months from when the state approved their legislative districts. That occurred in mid-November, and so under this timeline, we would have the ability to meet that 6-month timeline. The other thing is, just as we look at how we are going to prepare the maps and the things that we're going to consider in doing those draft maps, is that we'll be looking at continuity of the existing districts, so that we're trying to keep as much of them sort of intact as we can. Although, as you'll recall from the November meeting, Councilman Gettle's district had a significant amount of growth, and so there is some reason for there to be some change in the districts, but we'll look to keep some continuity. We'll be looking to make sure that the districts remain as compact as possible, so that we don't get the sort of those branches that don't really make sense that come off of some legislative districts throughout the country. We want to make sure that it's sort of understood where these boundaries are. Next, we'll do our best to try to keep some neighborhood integrity as we put together these districts, meaning that if we know that there is sort of an established neighborhood, that we wouldn't break it up into one or more districts. And then the final thing is that we'll be looking to make sure that the districts are understandable, that there is a street, heavy rail, something that is a reasonable boundary. We won't be running the district lines through, for example, people's properties or that kind of thing, or trying not to do that. And then the final thing just to mention is that while those are the things that we'll be looking for in order to create these districts, the other thing is that state law does require us to have substantially equal populations in those districts. So that's our plan, how we intend to proceed. That's what we just had discussed earlier in the fall. And like I said, I wanted to refresh your memory on what we had discussed and provide an opportunity for the public to hear it as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have one, I guess, request with this. I think it'd be great to see 2 open houses instead of 1 during, I think that sometimes in our community, we see if it was held here at City Hall, not doing something maybe on the east side of the city as well. So we're having one both on the west and east side. Just a suggestion.
We can do that.
Where would you hold it then, Matt? Like, do we have property over on the east side?
We'll have to, we don't, but whether we try to see if we could use one of the rooms at the school, at the high school, or we can try to find another location, but I'm sure we'll be able to find something that.
I just think like a 7 square mile city, they could make the journey. It's not like they need to bring a hand cart, down to City Hall. I just don't. I sometimes think that perpetuates this whole east versus west thing. When, I think you could drive the distance in 7 minutes. I don't know. I just don't want to go like way out of the way for something that I don't necessarily think is necessary. But whatever you can make work.
I like the idea of having two, just to allow people a second opportunity to attend if they can't make the first one. But I agree with Councilmember Brown that we should, as much as possible, steer clear of, making it a, hey, east side of Midvale, come to our east side of Midvale redistricting meeting, and just say, hey, there's two. One's going to be here and one's going to be here. Attend either one or both of them if you want.
I'll clarify my comment. Whatever is decided is okay with me. During my time campaigning for this position, found a number of people specifically on the east side of Midvale who do not necessarily feel a part of our city, who feel like everything happens on the west side of our community. And I think finding more ways to engage those residents is not something harmful to try, and see how it goes.
Mayor, I didn't mean to downplay it. I overall agree with your sentiment on that.
We will, well, I was just gonna say, we will do 2 open houses, and we will let you know when we've decided what those locations are, and we'll try to put space between them so that it at least provides different opportunities for different parts of the city. And I think that basically means that we'll put it on the one on each side of the city in order to make it more convenient. But we won't really broadcast it as sort of like, this is the east side opportunity, even if it is on the east side.
And Matt, will the council and the mayor have the 2 or 3 options prior to the open house? Because I feel like it would be helpful if we're going to attend that we not be seeing the proposed maps for the very first time.
Yes, but to be clear, we can provide those to you sort of individually, but not in a, the intent was that you wouldn't have your first discussion as a council regarding those maps prior to the open house, but we can share them with you in advance. But if it is something where you would like to review them first, then do the open house, and then reconsider the maps after the open house, I mean, that is something that we could do. But if you're just saying, can we show them to you beforehand, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we will do that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on
Thank you.
Moving on to item B, discuss boundary law adjustment with Sandy City and Brandon Fry. Adam Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just opening up a presentation here. Let's see. Trying to figure out how to best do this, but while I'm figuring that out. So this was, we discussed this at a work session in November. This is a boundary line adjustment for property located at about 7600 South and 3rd East. Currently, these parcels are in Sandy City, and the property owner has been interested or has an interest in doing a boundary line adjustment between Sandy and Midvale to bring these properties into Midvale City. If they are in Midvale City, the proposal is to do basically a townhome or a twin home development, about 24 units. Access would be off of 300 East here in Midvale. Currently, there is no access from Sandy, so regardless of whether it stays in Sandy or comes into Midvale, the access will be off of 3rd East. I'm going to go back just a little bit. I just wanted to refresh your memory. Surrounding the property in Midvale along the west side is single-family residential. There's also a single-family residential zone on the south side. You'll notice on the south, it has a duplex overlay. So the zone that would be requested in any such boundary line adjustment would be the duplex overlay zone, as is contiguous to the south. The reason we wanted to just bring this to your attention again before we start any formal process, while there has been discussion at the staff level with Sandy City, we do not yet have an indication of where their council falls on this. They've not passed a resolution of intent for a boundary line adjustment. I don't believe they've discussed it at the council level. We've done a little more discussion on our end here in Midvale than they have in Sandy. Seeing that there are single family residential designations both to the west and south, it is a possibility that should this come into Midvale and the developer move forward with the request for a townhome or a twin home development, that there might be some neighborhood concern, given that everything or most existing structures surrounding this site are single family in nature. There are some duplex structures to the south, but largely to the west, east, and north. East and north being Sandy City, and west being here in Midvale. Those are largely just single family. And so again, there may be some neighborhood concern as this moves forward. So again, just wanted to go over the process. If the city does choose to move forward, there would be a resolution of intent for a boundary line adjustment. And then after a 60-day protest period, basically, there would be a public hearing. Then there would be an adoption of an ordinance which would approve the boundary line adjustment, and then it gets filed with the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then that takes effect either July 1st or January 1st, depending on when that's filed. If it does come into Midvale, the steps that would need to be followed are a small scale master plan, a conditional use permit, and then a preliminary and subdivision or preliminary and final subdivision plats. Again, this is just a concept, a rough concept of what the property owner would like to do should it be in Midvale. You can see that there are a total of 24 units in a twin home configuration. If there's any questions, we can address those. I know Nate, Matt, and I have discussed this a little bit, but we can try to answer any questions you may have.
The one question I have, and I think I asked this last time, but I can't remember the answer. If it stays in Sandy, what can they do the same thing or not?
According to the petitioner, they may be able to do something similar. But again, in Sandy City, it's still a single family zone. I don't know what kind of overlays in place, but it is a single family zone in Sandy City right now.
Adam, if I may correct you, it's an R2, it's zoned R2 right now, currently. So it's currently zoned duplex.
You're right. I thought it was R18. It's R2.
Yeah, and that was my intent, is I wasn't looking to up the zoning or change the zoning. I was looking to just correlate the same zoning. However, work with Midvale City. One, as Adam mentioned, is the access, and then the property is already serviced by Midvale City. There's really no benefit to Sandy City right now with any of the utilities or any of that such. So anyway, that's yeah, it is currently zoned R2.
Having said that, I've lived in an area before where you weren't in the city that you were next to, and you really had a hard time getting police, fire, and everything else to your thing. So in some respects, I like the idea, as long as we're not up the zoning, that they would have better police and fire response than they would living in Sandy, most likely.
I agree with Councilmember Glover on that. My fear for that is if we do up the zoning and they have additional housing, we're already hearing from a lot of people on that 78th area right there that they're getting jam-packed with these duplex, triplex that are all coming in. So I feel like it's going to cause a lot of issues. especially in a developed neighborhood that looks to be right around those houses, pretty much single family.
So also just to clarify, the houses to the south are duplexes. So it's a single family. It's this SF1 duplex overlay zone that abuts me to the south currently. So that was my intent, again, just to leave the zoning the way it currently is zoned, and then match that southern, the southern, same side of the road, the eastern side, southern properties, current zoning.
I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
From my understanding, an analysis was done, and this showed that the city would increase revenue by $20,000 about over 20 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, the analysis itself showed about 19,200, and again, that's over a 20-year period. So it's quite a long horizon time there.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do we know what the average amount of revenue would usually be seen on a project this size?
I couldn't speak for that. I don't know.
We haven't done calculations in finance on that, so we don't have that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to just remind the council, again, this is largely, not only is it contingent on Midvale City passing a resolution of intent, but Sandy City as well. If their council chooses not to pursue that, then the property owner's choice is to, really only choice is develop in Sandy City under their ordinances.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
I guess if that's the case, I'm just concerned that we need to really find out if Sandy City is going to do it before we do a lot of work and move forward.
The next, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but the next step sort of has to be done in unison. And there is a fair amount of work that's involved, and we'll make sure that the costs for that are covered by the developer. But if we don't both approve the next step, the resolution, then the timeline expands. Right now, it's sort of working under the accelerated timeline that Adam had showed before, that sort of makes it so that we're able to get this done by this summer. If Sandy doesn't approve, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but if they don't approve that resolution, I think on the February 1st meeting, then it would not be possible to hit that summer deadline.
Correct. It would be contingent on that. What that would do, it would just push it back to that next approval level at the Lieutenant Governor's office. It could still move forward. It just, the accelerated timeframe would be pushed back.
And just if I may, all my discussions with Sandy City, they seem to be in favor of moving forward. They didn't have any negative feedback, at least to me. And in fact, we're more favorable to moving forward with the annexation, the boundary line adjustment. That's been my discussions with Sandy.
Okay, last chance. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much, Adam and Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Moving on to item C, mid-year budget update for fiscal year 2022. Mariah Hill will present.
Good evening, council. Let me just share my screen. Okay, this should be, pretty quick and simple. Just a mid-year update on the revenues and expenditures by fund for the city as they sit at the mid-year of our fiscal year.
Ryan, we don't see your screen. Did you share it?
No. Yes, I did. It says it's shared.
I once went through a whole presentation before somebody told me my screen wasn't shared, so I'm just trying to save you.
Yeah, let's see. I have a blue thing around it. Says I'm screen sharing. now?
Looks good.
Let's see when I do this. Did it stay shared?
It did.
Okay. This is, I'm just going to basically take you through, as how the funds sit, and then I'll talk about any of the kind of subcategories in our budgets if they fall like below or above 5% of the 50% mark at the halfway through the year. And then this is really just a pretty high level review. I don't want to be too redundant for the coming budget amendment presentations in the next couple of meetings. So the revenues for the general fund are at 42.2% of budget. It's a little low. That's in part, our license and permits is at 43.5%. This seems mainly because our building permit fees are a little lower than budgeted. I think that this is probably just a seasonal type thing, that more building permits tend to come in the spring. Our intergovernmental is at 19.8%. This category houses a lot of our grants, and we just haven't received those yet for this fiscal year. Miscellaneous item, we have some unbudgeted insurance proceeds that we received. So although that looks like a wild percent, it's only about $4,000. And then we just budgeted to have the use of fund balance for one-time expenditures, and we just haven't used any of that yet. So that kind of is how that breaks down. For the general fund expenditures, we're at 53.4% of budget. Some things that are just off of 50% is in administrative services, public works, and community development. All of those are generally operating pretty slimly. And I think this is true throughout our entire budget, is that there are some larger things that were budgeted for that have been yet to be paid for. And that's in part due to when they're done in the year, we haven't paid for the audit yet, things like that. There's court expenditures that aren't being used because of COVID and some other things like that. And there's just purchasing and supply chain delays throughout. And then we did all budgeted transfers at the beginning of the fiscal year this year, so that our transfers are at 100%. And that is also skewing things a little bit. In a capital projects fund, our revenues are at 50.1%, so right on, and our expenditures are at 18.6%. This is because a lot of our capital project expenditures are not yet, they're not yet rolling through. A lot of that's because they're weather reliant projects, or there's lack of staff time to spearhead them yet. And then some are budget funds that are like savings for future projects, and so those won't be really spent. They're just budgeted in so that they're appropriated. And then there are some carryovers from that haven't been done yet. In the water fund, our revenues are at 80.1% of budget. This is because the ARPA funds were not originally included in the budget, and they are in our accounting system. Our expenses are at 54.2%. Like I said, the operating and budget's the same as with admin services and those in the general fund. And the capital budget is in the same. So basically all the operating budgets and capital budgets are having the same issues as, or not issues, they're not issues, but that's why they're all a little lower than the 50% level. And then the debt service fund in the water fund is we've made our one-time debt service principal payment for the year. So that's why that is high. In the sewer fund, our revenues are at 51.4% of budget, and the expenses are also at the same, weirdly. You can see that the operating budget is the same. They're all kind of at that 35 to 40%. And we made our one-time bond payment to South Valley Water in September, and so that's why that expense count is a little high. In the stormwater fund, revenues are at 50% of budget and expenses at 53.3%. Again, you'll see those operating and capital budgets are a little low. And then we've also made our one-time principal payment for our debt service account. In the street lighting fund, revenues are at 49.6% and expenses at 43.3%. The operating budget, I think on this one that we maybe have not been invoiced from Salt Lake County Public Works for a couple months. And so that's why it's a little low. And then it just seems to be that there's less maintenance so far in this fiscal year. And then the lease payment is the one-time lease payment to the Municipal Building Authority from the Street Lighting Fund. In sanitation, revenues are at 49.2% and expenses at 39.4%. This is just all of our landfill and disposal fees are just coming in lower than we had expected, which is what we want. And then in our telecommunications fund, revenues at 88% of the budget. That's those one-time transfers that we did at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the expenses are right on at 50.3%. The fleet fund revenues are at 35.2% and the expenses are at 20.7%. This is almost can wholly be attributed to the inability to purchase a vehicle right now. We're working hard to figure that out so that we can get the replacement and new vehicles that were budgeted, but they're very hard to get a hold of. And so we haven't purchased any and therefore haven't sold any of our current vehicles. In our IT internal service fund, revenues are at 61.1% of the budget. Again, that's some of those transfers we did at the beginning of the year. And the expenses are at 29.1% of budget. This is hardware and software that comes out of this budget. It falls in that operating supply chain kind of mess. And then we have the $100,000 that we're saving for our citywide software implementation. That was really fast, but I told you it'd be quick and easy. Does anyone have any questions? Then that's it for me.
Thank you, Mariah. All right. Well, that is all we had tonight. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Bye.
Enjoy Hawaii, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.